Welcome to another edition of Extra Time with Girls on the Ball. We've had lots of drama this week. I got very wet again, as is the case with winter, unfortunately. And a little bit of movement in the table, kind of, sort of. A little bit of excitement in the table, both at the top and at the bottom. So let's get into it. I'm Rachel.
I'm Sophie.
And this is Extra Time with Girls on the Ball. Okay, so in today's short, sharp episode, we're going to be obviously looking at the WSL matches. We're going to be looking at the Arsenal-Chelsea game. We've got to talk about it, the big one of the weekend, I think it's fair to say, and it definitely delivered. We're going to be looking at the FA Cup, have a quick look there, because there's no championship again this week. So, hey, at least the championship stays the same. Yes. Technically. We're going to be talking about Nations League draw, and then a brief look forward as well to the Champions League. So, plenty to get into. And of course, Sophie, we will find out your standout moment of the week. So,
I have already got it this week. I'm not thinking it up on the spot. So.
This is a rarity. I'm so glad we were filming this as well. We've got all of this audio. Oh, we did this last week as well.
Hourly.
You said it with such insistent. Oh, I roll. Hourly captured. Before we get into it though, do make sure you are subscribed on whatever your podcast app is, or on YouTube, so you don't miss an episode, especially some of our little extra episodes that we like to drop in here and there. And if you'd like to leave us a review, we'd be very, very pleased. Thank you very much. Okay, shall I run through the WSL results?
Sure.
Let's do it. We had Manchester City 2, Aston Villa 1, Turner and Hemp with 2 goals. Arsenal 4, Chelsea 1, Mead, Ilestedt, Russo with 2, and Ritten Cannerid with the goal for Chelsea. Liverpool 1, Bristol 1, Hogg and Thestrup with the goals. Brighton 2, Leicester 2, Turland with 2 goals, and Rantala and Pederman getting the goals for Leicester. West Ham 0, Everton 1. Kay Holmgaard, I have to say it's Karen. But pretty sure her twin sister set her up. Yep. So not bad. Spurs 0, Manchester United 4. Blundell, Toon, Mallard and Ladd with the goals there. Quite a few braces. This is a weekend of braces.
Yeah.
Lovely. Love that. Okay, let's get on to the first game of the weekend, which was Manchester City 2, Aston Villa 1. This happened on Saturday, and it was quite rare for us because we watched it from the couch, and actually it was lovely because the weather looked terrible and it was a really long drive, so quite pleased we watched it from the couch.
Yeah, trying to get up to Manchester for a 12 o'clock kickoff is no fun, especially when you're doing it from the south coast of England. Mm-hmm. So it's no fun from London, let alone when you're 2 hours further away from London than that. So I think it was a really good decision on our part.
Yeah, and Manchester City obviously coming away with the 3 points. We've already touched on Hemp's form so far this season for both club and country, and it's something she's continuing again and continued again this week. But if you remember last year, Aston Villa was kind of the thorn in Manchester City's side. They took 4 points from their 2 meetings, but it wasn't to be this time round. Manchester City looked a better outfit, and I think as well Aston Villa second half wasn't their best.
Yeah, Aston Villa actually did really well in the first half. They got their goal through kind of an unlikely source in Danielle Turner, and what a goal it was. It was a no-look volley from a defender on her weaker
no big deal,
foot, I think.
No big deal.
So, that was a really special way to take the lead, and I think they did really well in restricting the wide areas for City. We know City love to cross in, but they managed to defend them really well, and I thought Anna Patton did pretty well in defence, as did Danielle Turner on a couple of occasions, marshalling Bunny Shaw in that central area, and it was forcing Bunny Shaw to come deeper. So then she was a little bit out of position, maybe a second out of being in those central areas to be on the end of those crosses, because she was getting a bit frustrated about not getting on the ball. In the second half though, I think Aston Villa, City were really good and they turned it on, and you've got a player like Lauren Hemp, and they managed to really cut out their press was cutting out the midfield area. So when someone like Kenza Dali is trying to get on the ball, she had no time on the ball, and the same with Lucy Staniforth. They had barely a second to pick their pass, which gave them no room to operate in and kind of create those balls forward to the likes of Rachel Daly, who was getting increasingly frustrated up front.
And like Bunny Shaw, dropping deep.
But I think Aston Villa were also sort of a maker of their own
downfall
problems as well, because they just weren't, their passes out from the back just were not consistent or good enough, or they just played themselves into trouble when easier passes were on or easier options were on.
Decision making was poor.
And you could just tell the difference in decision making between the two sides, and how much work Aston Villa still need to do to get to a team like City's level. I think Lauren Hemp is superb. She said in her post-match about how she was probably getting more chances last season, but she just wasn't making use of them, whereas she's getting less chances this season, but when she gets them, she's making them count and she's clinical with them. So it's maybe not about the quantity of chances, but actually what you do with them and making them count. That's what matters. And she's in some form. It wasn't just her goal scoring, you know, she added 2 goals, yeah, but it was her press, the way she was chasing down, her work on and off the ball, I think was really crucial to their success. And yeah, long may it continue, because I think the Lauren Hemp that we've seen from the World Cup onwards is the Lauren Hemp we all expected to see, you know, in the Euros. And I think maybe that tournament was a bit too soon for her. She's still so young. And I think Gareth Taylor said it in post-match. It's kind of scary how young she is and how much better she can become. And that's not saying she's not good, but it's like the ceiling is really, really high.
And because they're so good when they're so young, you forget how young they are, and then they get better and you're like, and she's still only what, like 23, 24?
22, I think.
Oh, it's disgraceful. That's just makes me feel sick. No, I'm joking, of course. She has been brilliant. And also, you said a couple of times there, Man City and their press, that is such a weapon for them, and it really paid off, particularly, I thought, in the second half. Okay, we're going to move on to the Arsenal-Chelsea game, 4-1 to Arsenal. Now, we did a live on Saturday, and I was wearing a new T-shirt that Art of Football sent me, very kindly sent me, and it was an Arsenal shirt. So I thought today I'd wear a Chelsea sweater, just to really like put the cat amongst the pigeons and confuse everybody. And also I just really like this sweater. But yeah, just to balance things out across our platforms, I have worn both Arsenal and Chelsea gear this weekend.
Oh yeah, nothing but neutral.
Absolutely. Well, I was at this one. What a game it was. Sorry, if you can hear the little click-clack in the background, that is the rabbit's nails on the floor as he carts around the room while we're doing a podcast. It's very unhelpful and distracting. I was at this one, went to the Emirates for this one. We did a special upfront episode from there, which was pretty cool. But, you know, what a day it was, just generally in terms of the wider football, looking at things. Such a massive crowd, over 59,000 tickets sold, I think it was, which is a new record. Clash of the Titans. It was a really enjoyable match to watch. I do think, you know, there's been better fixtures between Arsenal and Chelsea and kind of more even fixtures. I think Chelsea maybe just weren't at the races today. And Emma Hayes, she kind of said they were bullied in every area. And I do think that is the case. Like, Chelsea were just off the pace a little bit in every area. But I also then, you have to put that down to Arsenal, their press, the lack of time they were giving Chelsea in every area of the pitch. I thought Arsenal's press was really, really good, very intense. And it was an area, if you can get around the Arsenal press, that you can be, you know, you can find success. I think that's how Chelsea got their first goal and the equaliser after Beth Mead scored. Beth Mead's goal was a thing of beauty. You know, the way, and in the past we'd maybe see Arsenal not be able to maintain possession in a situation like that, where they're under pressure from defence and they're having to make those quick passes, and more often than not we would have seen that break down. But there was something about them yesterday where everything was kind of going their way, and they weren't letting any ball get away from them. And the fact, you know, even when Palova got the ball, I didn't see how she was going to make something of it, and she managed to make that turn and get it out to Beth Mead. And
Palova is one of the most... her ability to resist the press from opponents has come on leaps and bounds this season, especially in that, when we see her in that central midfield area, her ball control and her ability to just kind of hold off the opponent is second to none. And it was kind of, she's really good in the press too, but I thought that stood out. And then when you take Russo and her pressing ability and her chasing down, especially on Chelsea's left side, and she was just immediately on them. As soon as they had the ball, she was pushing forward and triggering that press. So I think both were two like standout characters in the whole performance of Arsenal. But every single member of that team pressed really well and were really on it from the word go. And
there was a moment with Palova where she was holding off, I think it might have been Erin Cuthbert, and I thought to myself, that was very Kim Little-esque. Her ability to keep her centre of gravity low makes it really hard for players to get the ball off her, and her ball control under pressure is very Kim Little-esque. And I think because Kim Little was back and I saw the two kind of side by side, I thought there was a real similarity between the two of them. Now, Kim Little did go off injured by the looks of it. Hopefully it's nothing too serious. Also, I thought, Lotte Wubben-Moy performed well, and we're going to touch on her a little bit later on because some of you very kindly sent in some questions that we're going to answer. But yeah, dealing with the likes of Sam Kerr and was pretty impressive from Lotte. And I think over the last couple of tricky games they've played, she has stood out as well.
Yeah, I think she's absolutely stood up and stood out for Arsenal. For a player who has at times struggled to start, I think she's really stepped up her levels. Not just this year, but last season as well. Even at the beginning of last season when she wasn't playing and she was called on, I think, when was it Rafaela got injured in the just before the winter break, and she came in and she looked like she'd been really slipped seamlessly into that team. She's become such an intelligent defender. She's good on the ball as well. So yeah, I think her performances are key, and she's really playing herself into a permanent starting place with you've got to think about who's coming back. Leah Williamson will come back eventually, but you can't really I'd put Lotte at the top of the defending pile in that Arsenal team. And surely
an England chance.
That's the one thing I really don't understand with England is why Lotte hasn't been given a chance, because she is showing in games what she can do, and she's doing it consistently well. So I'm not sure why she doesn't seem to be getting an England chance when central defenders are falling like flies.
Yeah. Jonas Eidevall said afterwards, I don't think I've seen anyone manage the ball that well against Chelsea except maybe Barcelona. It was our best performance of the season. It was, and I think it's kind of what we've been waiting for from Arsenal because of the signings that they've made. You were thinking this is the level they should be playing at all the time, and it's taken them a while to actually get to that level. I still think Chelsea's goal, great goal, but also poor goalkeeping. But in terms of the break from Chelsea, it was excellent. But poor goalkeeping on an inside post, I think Zinsberger should have done better. But I think she did do well across the game.
Yeah, I think there were several mistakes in the build up to that goal. The thing is, you'll probably put more focus on it if it was 2-1 or it had to win the game. But actually, mistakes do happen in games and goals do get conceded. So I wouldn't put too much weight on it from an Arsenal point of view. Chelsea were always going to find an edge back into the game. It's just Arsenal were so good that they didn't let that overpower them and flip the script, as it were. And they just kept on going and kept on pushing and creating chances. And their transitional play is just electric. When it gets going, it's so quick. The crossfield ball from Leah Volti for Russo for that second goal, it's phenomenal. The way that they can just switch it on into attack from defensive positions is incredible.
Yeah, I thought Russo played very, very well, and a very good goal from her, given she's struggled with some of the easier opportunities in the last few weeks. But we have spoken about the work she does off the ball and the credit she deserves.
May I just say, got a smashing photo.
Oh, thank you so much.
She looked straight down your camera.
She did, thanks Leslie.
She did.
A smashing photo of her splashing in the rain, which was so incredibly heavy. I got very, very, very wet. But I do think it was maybe kind of worth it. We'll see. We haven't fully edited all the photos yet, but I'd like to think it was. I also don't think it's season defining yet for either team. I think it's a very important in terms of keeping the title race exciting. I think had Chelsea gone 6 points ahead, it may have been a bit less exciting, but in terms of...
It brings everyone back into it. Yeah. It's not just Arsenal, who are now joint top on points, not goal difference, but on points. But it brings City and United back into the equation. City are just 3 points below them. United are 1 point below that. So they're all bunching up now. And as you say, if Chelsea had gone 6 points clear, there would have been a clear gap between the top and fourth. Whereas now anything is possible in the second half of the season.
But at the same time, I don't think Chelsea will be overly worried either. So we won't get ahead of ourselves. Okay, next up, Liverpool 1, Bristol 1. By the sounds of it, Bristol did well to get a point out of this game. They went ahead first as well, didn't they?
They did. It was a really nice goal as well. Abby Harrison looked like she was getting back to her best again. She had that injury at the start of the season, and I think it's taken her a bit of time to get fully into full flight mode. Yeah. But she looked really, really dangerous in the box, and she caused a few problems for Tegan Micah as well. Tegan Micah made a big save at the end to deny her, but she drove in the ball and it was flicked on at the far post by Thestrop, who's in really good goal scoring form for Bristol at the moment. And Matt Beard was said that he thought that Liverpool were lucky, that they didn't control the ball well enough, and he was really disappointed of that area of the game and the use of the ball. And I think Bristol, some people might say they gave up a 1-0 lead, but they were bottom of the table. They have been tipped by almost everyone to be going straight back down to the Championship. And that's one point that lifts them off the bottom. That yes, they've got Chelsea next week, but West Ham are playing Leicester. So, Leicester are in pretty good
It's all
form
about
at the moment.
points. That's all Bristol care about.
If Bristol can maintain their position just above the drop zone going into the winter break, that sets them up perfectly for the new year in the second half of the season, where they can really push on. So I think they've done a really good job, and to go to Prenton Park against a Liverpool team that are sitting in fifth and get a point is a pretty good,
Absolutely.
good one.
Another draw to move on to. You were at this one. Brighton 2, Leicester 2, and another team to give up a lead, Leicester. Pretty good comeback from Brighton, thanks to Elizabeth Turland, who is proving to be one of the best players that I've put into my fantasy team, because she just keeps delivering, and I'm pretty sure she's put herself top of the goal scoring charts as well,
7.
hasn't she?
She's top.
But she wasn't happy. Wasn't happy with only 2. She wanted 3. Almost had it as well. You spoke to her after the match, but yeah, talk us through this one.
Yeah, I was trying to ask her about whether she was what was the key behind her form this season, and she was having none of it. She was just like, I just wanted to score the third. She got the ball in injury time and drove it wide when you'd probably put your house on her putting it in the back of the net. So
to be fair, she'd scored 2 in like 10 minutes, hadn't she?
Yeah, but it was a quintessential
Okay.
Turland.
Well, we're giving
chance.
you the praise.
So I'm giving her the praise. I think she's been brilliant. I think Melissa Phillips in post-match also said how hard a worker she is. And she said she always strives for more. And you could probably tell that from the post-match interview. From Leicester's point of view, they looked so comfortable for the first 80 minutes. Brighton started pretty well, but they were not really creating much. And then Leicester scored just before the break, literally 45th minute. Petterman with a really fine finish. You should watch it. I think there might have been an inkling of handball in the build-up, but it doesn't take anything away from the finish on the half volley. It was absolutely superb. And then the second one, literally from the restart, there were like 10 passes off Leicester restarting the game in the second half, and it went straight up the other end, and it's another beauty of a finish, a curling strike into the top corner from Rantala. So they look pretty much in control. And then I think Brighton worked out that if you break Leicester's press, you have a chance. And as with Manchester City earlier in the season, Manchester City won 1-0 against Leicester, and they were using the direct ball over the top a lot more than they would normally do from Chiara Keating.
Because Leicester were very brave in their press.
And Brighton's two goals came from that ball over the top that bypassed the Leicester press, so it completely bypassed the midfield area. The first one, Torres Dete got in a clearance off Rantala. She probably didn't mean it, but it went straight to Elizabeth Turland, who broke through and had the ball control to put it in. The second one came from a goal kick from Bagley, which was flicked on. It broke the press. It was flicked on by Bremer, and then they were away, and they left Turland unmarked at the near post, which
Don't do
you
that.
can't be doing.
Can't do that.
So I think they figured it out late on, and they showed a lot of character to get back into it, and they had 2 chances in injury time to win the game. They had Leicester on the ropes, and Willie Kirk was, I kind of put it to him that, it's probably the 3rd time they've lost a 2-goal lead in games both in the league and the Conti Cup. And that, while they were all different, it's sort of becoming a running theme a little bit. And he said he thinks his side are a bit fearful maybe it's inexperience, or maybe it's just the circumstances that they're in. So when they go up 2-0 up against a team that they shouldn't be 2-0 up again, they start to panic maybe. And then when they're 2-0 up against a team they should be winning, they're not used to that situation where they should be winning. So
they take their foot off the gas.
They take the foot off the gas. So he said that the fear is kind of manifesting in different ways. He thought they looked like they got too comfortable up until 80 minutes, and that's why Brighton were able to get back into it, because they weren't pressing with their usual urgency and intensity. And he said, we need to play like that, us, to get results, and we weren't kind of playing like us in that last section of the game.
Shall we hear from Willie?
Yes.
And I think it's I think there's a number of different reasons for it. We've had 2-0 leads against Man City and Arsenal and not changed shapes, and then we've had a 2-0 lead today and we have changed shape, and it's still the same outcome. So we need to find a way to deal with it better. I think there's a little bit of fear in our game in terms of either being the lead and not want to be the one that makes a mistake to let it slip, or The fear's presenting itself in different ways in different games. The Chelsea game, we were fearful at the start and conceded early, but then actually came onto a game when it was almost like the scoreline that it should have been. We should have been losing to Chelsea, and then we play. So yeah, it's a really frustrating one, and we've just got to continue being us regardless of the scoreline. I think that's really important, and being us is not getting comfortable at 2-0. Being us is continuing to press aggressively and keep the ball on the deck as much as possible. And the only time we go direct is when we've drawn teams out and tried to go in behind in a wide area, and we're doing it a little bit too often.
Okay, I think you summed up pretty well what Willie said, but it was good to hear it directly from him. And actually, I asked Mel Phillips pre-match about both sides. I think have struggled to maintain a style of play for 90 minutes, and particularly Leicester. I think they're often involved in games that are games of two halves, and it's interesting. I kind of said to Mel, how important is it for her players to be able to recognise when that happens and capitalise on when that happens. And interestingly, it kind of feels a little bit like that's what happened, is that despite it being 80 minutes, they knew if they didn't give up, they could still be in with a chance in this game. And I think that'll probably be quite important for them mentally to know that, and I think teams like Manchester United have now got that in their heads where they're like, it's not over until the final whistle blows, which sounds ridiculous, but you see teams like that fighting till the end and getting something out of it. And I think that's something that Brighton are going to start to really appreciate having in their team.
Yeah. I think Leicester can't be too, it will feel like a loss because they were 2-0 up, but they got a point. They are still getting points on the board. Willie Kirk also mentioned that next week's game against West Ham is crucial. They will feel that they should win that game, given West Ham's form currently.
Well, let's get on to West Ham. That was a lovely segue. They did lose 1-0 to Everton, and I'm a bit frustrated because I really like Rhian Skinner, and I think, she's shown some good things, and I think West Ham have played some good football this season, and the results haven't been going their way. But I think not being able to capitalise on Everton have a thin squad anyway, and we've said we've been worried about them. But pre-match, my God, they had even more injuries to the squad during the international break. And at one point, Brian Sorensen joked that he was going to play a 1-6-3 formation because he had one recognisable defender in the team. So to not be able to capitalise on something like that, is really frustrating for West Ham.
They had their chances
because they had their chances.
And it was pretty wasteful, from Vivian Asai and Yuki. They had chances to score goals.
They were hitting it in and around the goal.
And
every bit of the goal but the
Courtney
back.
Brosnan did make a few saves. She made a really spectacular save off Yuki, tipped it onto the post. And then pretty much in the next phase of the game, Everton went down the other end and scored off the corner. But you've got to be making those chances count, because they didn't create all that many, but they created enough that were good enough chances to be on goal, and that they should be probably putting away. And especially against, as you say, a side like Everton, who are somehow getting points without having the squad and have been struggling a bit, but they do have this quality that they find a goal eventually. It was their third win of the season, and they're up to 7th.
And they don't have a lot of goals scored this season. They're not very good at scoring from open play.
Piemonte is still out, suspended.
Yeah.
Their main goal scorer, they're number 9.
And arguably they have, is it the same number of points they ended the year on last season? Yeah. And they have it now, which is pretty impressive given everything we've just said. So somehow they're chipping away, and I guess, to pick up 3 points against West Ham, they've dropped West Ham now to the bottom of the table. And looking at the table, we've got, I'm getting ahead of myself slightly, but we've got West Ham sitting bottom with Brighton 1 point above them. So
Bristol.
Brighton. Bristol 1 point above them. So, while some say it's a shame Bristol didn't hang on to that lead, all those little points are adding up.
They all count. Exactly.
Right, the final game of the weekend was Spurs-Man United, with Man United winning 4-0. England had a chance, who's back, captain the side, which is great to see. But as you kind of alluded to me beforehand, it was Manchester United's patience that
it was experience, I think. And I think that is a theme of this season. The gap is closing, I think, between the teams. Mm-hmm. But you're seeing the experienced teams win out in the end. So for Tottenham, they had a really good start, but they couldn't make it count. And then Manchester United just had to be patient, and then they could build into the game. And they got rid of the first 20 minutes. They managed this. It wasn't the best 20 minutes of their footballing lives, but they managed to see it out, and they didn't concede. And then they were able to push on and really start to enjoy themselves. I think getting that first goal, the Blundell goal, it kind of came from not nowhere. They had been building. Leah Gilton been looking really good on the down the left hand side, but they hadn't really threatened Tottenham's goal. But once that went in, I think they knew they had the noses in front, and then they could just build into the game. And they came out in the second half a lot more energised. Their press was so much more energetic. They were starting to up the levels, and Tottenham just never really found a way to deal with that. I really loved Ella Toon's goal. It was direct from the Myla Tizier to Melvin Mallard to Ella Toon, who dinked it over the keeper, and I was just like, that's really, that was an absolute beautiful goal. So I sort of shout out that one. Manchester United dominated possession, but they didn't actually create much more than Tottenham. They only created one more, and they had one less goal on target. So,
that is interesting.
In that respect, they were pretty even. But I think it was experience and sort of know-how of how to manage games and go through the gears and work your way into it. And that's where they were different from Tottenham. I do feel for Tottenham. You could tell they were a team that were without four of their starters. Their whole midfield has had to be uprooted. Sumanen, Artinen, Drew Spence, they're all out. They were his three midfield starters at the beginning of the season, and they're all injured. And then you had Luana Buller at the back, who was also out. So you can tell that the injuries were starting to hit them as well, and they were having to play players in different positions. Ash Neville went over to the right side. And even though that's kind of where she has played before and she's a right-sided player, she's so used to that left-back role, she looked a bit out of the
the
loop.
Shalina Zadorsky as well playing the left side, which, and she's probably a bit more used to playing more centrally. So. And
while Shalina Zadorsky and Amy Turner are super experienced, they haven't played that much football this season. So, it was also having to rejiggle the puzzle. And then Bethany England was really annoyed when she came off. She you could tell what she thought from the camera.
But it was planned.
But she had that was a one for her own good. She's not played football in so long, she couldn't play 90 minutes. And while she's the kind of player who wants to play every minute, it was right from Robert to pull her out of the game, because you're thinking long term about her health and her fitness, and a hip surgery is not a fun thing to come back from. So it's just
absolutely.
Got to look after the player first and foremost.
So for the table then, it means Chelsea, they're still on top with 22 points and a better goal difference than Arsenal, but Arsenal are in second, also on 22 points. Man City are just behind in 3 points, with just 3 points behind on 19, I should say, sorry.
3 points.
Yeah, there's my maths for you. No, they're 3 points behind, which is pretty impressive. It keeps things tight. And then United are sitting in fourth on 18 points, and then Liverpool are 3 points behind them. But down the bottom of the table, we have a new team, as I said, taking up the relegation spot, which is not something they're going to want. With Bristol's draw, they've leapfrogged West Ham. They're now on 5 points, with the Hammers on 4. It's pretty tight down there. Villa are in 10th place on 6 points, and Brighton and Leicester on 8 and 9, respectively. So it's all pretty close down there as well. But it's exciting, and this is why actually I find those mid-table matches, if you like, really exciting, because it can really shift things around. All right, speaking of excitement, one of the reasons there was no championship, as I said at the start of the episode, is because of the FA Cup third round. Tell us what happened. There weren't any major shocks, were there?
No real major shocks. I think, in some respects, I'm pretty sure, say, Crystal Palace against Chatham held them quite close until, the last 20 minutes, and then kind of the fitness tells, and they Crystal Palace won 6-0 in the end, but I think I think it was 3-0 for a good portion of the game, and then it's just that fitness. You're coming from pretty much amateur teams to semi-pro professional. Crystal Palace are a professional outfit now these days, so that also makes it particularly hard. But I think one that did catch your eye was the South Coast derby. Southampton edged out Portsmouth 2-1 in the end, but it was never going to be an easy task, and they managed to get through to the next round. But those derbies are always special down on the South Coast. It was also a special day for Darwin. They were the lowest team left in the cup. They play in the Northwest Division 1 Northern, I think, and they face Blackburn Rovers in the Championship, and they're 1.5 miles apart in distance. So a very short distance for Blackburn to travel, Darwin in the end lost 4-0. But like, what a day for them. And that's what kind of the cup is about, right? And then I think the really close one was Rugby Borough. So they play in the FA WNL Premier. And they took on Sheffield United and they took them to extra time. And Sheffield won 3-2 in extra time.
Brilliant.
So there are some close encounters.
Some exciting games.
No real surprises. And, going into the next round where I think the WSL teams come in now. Mm-hmm. So, it's going to be interesting.
Brilliant. Right, well, that means that we have come to the moment of the podcast where you tell us your moment of the weekend, whatever you want to call it.
So normally I go for a footballing moment, but this week I am going for Alex Scott's monologue. You weren't expecting that, were you?
You surprised even me.
No, I'm going for Alex Scott's monologue at the end of the game between Arsenal and Chelsea, because I think it's really, I'm not going to mention his name, but I think there's been a lot of discourse this week around women being involved in football and whether they have a place in football, and they do. And football is better for it when they do. And despite what some people want to pull the game back into the dark ages, there is no place for that, and we should be moving forward. So Alex Scott, as she was leading out on the BBC coverage, said that obviously that all women belong in football and it's a better place for it. And if you haven't seen it, go and watch it. It's on our feed because
a great clip.
That was my moment of the week.
Well done, Alex. Right, today we did have the draw for the Nations League, so the kind of all the permutations of who's potentially going to get relegated, etc., etc. So what happened basically, we've got League A, League B playoff, and the games are Serbia taking on Iceland, Hungary against Belgium, Bosnia and Herzegovina against Sweden, and Croatia versus Norway. And
so they're playing for a position in League A.
Yes.
In the European qualification phase.
Or to potentially get dumped out into League B.
Yeah, so whoever loses goes into League B, whoever wins goes into
And then the same is happening for League B, League C, and those matches are Latvia versus Slovakia, Montenegro versus Northern Ireland, that's one we're keeping an eye on, and Bulgaria versus Ukraine.
It will be a disaster for Northern Ireland if they get dumped into
Putting it
League
mildly.
C. So
disaster.
That's a huge one in February for them.
It is. And then, of course, the semi-finals of the Nations League are between Spain versus the Netherlands and France versus Germany. So one of those four will not make the Olympics. You'd be right. Okay, we've had a few questions in on Instagram. So we're going to go through some of them. We've got Shelby_J11. I hope I've got that right. Can Chelsea bounce back midweek in the Champions League? Yes, I think they can. I don't think this loss defines them. And if anything, I think Chelsea are more dangerous when they've lost a match. When they're going to be angry.
Especially a defeat like that, I think they will know across the field they weren't good enough. And they didn't put enough into that game. And that's not taking nothing away from Arsenal. Arsenal's performance was unbelievable. But Chelsea weren't the Chelsea that we're used to seeing. And I think Emma Hayes and her team are so driven to win that they will make sure that by Thursday they are refreshed and well G'd up to take on Häcken. It's, everything is at stake in this double header. They play Häcken at home this week and then they travel to Gothenburg next week to play Häcken again. Häcken are sitting top of the group at the moment. If they can get 6 points, they're pretty much qualified before the Christmas break, even though there's 2 games left to play. So it would set them in really good stead going into that winter break. And I think the motivation will be super high, especially at Stamford Bridge.
Yeah, absolutely. We were also asked about how impressed we've been with Lotta, and I think you've heard just how impressed we've been with Lotta earlier on in the episode. Elaine Darmody asked, do you think Caitlyn Hayes' performance for the Irish national team will have WSL clubs interested? Yes, I do. And Brian Sorensen, if you're listening, I know you like an Irish defender. I definitely recommend Caitlyn Hayes. She's been doing very well for Ireland.
She has.
And
she
putting in the goals
came
as
out
well.
of nowhere because she got her registration, because obviously she's had to get registered to switch nationalities. So she got her registration through quite late in that first window of the Nations League. Pretty much turned up to training and then got a start. Her registration papers went through and then she started at the Aviva against Northern Ireland, and she's never really looked back, and she has fitted so seamlessly into that defensive line for Ireland. I think she got her goal as well in that second game. Her Ireland career has taken off, and I wouldn't be surprised if some
WSL clubs
come running for her.
Sean A. Sutton, I think, that's your name because it's all one word, asked our opinions on the LJFL. Was it a red? And we both think that she's lucky to have just gotten a yellow for that one.
I think she's very lucky. I think it's going to be interesting to watch this week because it depends what the referee's report says. If the ref kind of saw the stamp, then I don't know what they can do about it. But if she didn't, and if she doesn't detail it in her report, I think there might be retrospective action.
Interesting.
And that would be a problem for Chelsea. You've got to hope that there is none, but, you know, you can't be being reckless like that. And that kind of petulant aspect to her game needs to be stopped by Emma Hayes and by Serena Wiedmann, I think, because it's twice now in the space of a few months that we've seen it happen, and
not ideal.
It's not ideal, and you know, she's the most talented player in the country, but those kind of things need ironing out and stopping.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you so much for your questions. Enjoyed answering them. It's a wrap on another episode of Extra Time with Girls on the Ball. We are off to Lisbon tomorrow to watch Benfica take on
warm weather.
Eintracht Frankfurt. I'm not sure it's as warm as maybe you're thinking it is.
It's going to be warmer than here.
Okay,
it's got to be
a low bar, and then we'll be back in time for Chelsea Hacken at Stamford Bridge. So we'll try and get another episode out of those fixtures. But until then, make sure you're subscribing wherever you get your podcasts, and subscribe on YouTube as well, where we are also filming our episodes. You get to watch us talk about football as well. And yeah, we'll make sure to put a request out for questions next week. So until then, we will see you all soon.